They didn't use chains. They used a pen, one signature, one piece of paper, and Thomas, age 9, and Mary, age 6, were gone. Not kidnapped, not sold, legally removed from a mother who was standing right there. Her name was Hannah Matthews. She was free. The war was over. Slavery was abolished, and none of that protected her, because a man named Robert Darne walked into a courthouse 3 days after emancipation, reached Frederick County, Maryland, and filed papers to take her children back. Not secretly, not in the middle of the night in broad daylight, with a judge's signature, with government ink, with the full weight of the law behind him. The papers said Hannah was unfit. The papers said her children needed care. The papers said Thomas would work for Darne until age 21, Mary until 18. The same man, the same land, a different word on the document. Hannah was not absent when those papers were filed. She was not dead. She was not missing. She was in that county looking for work, asking about her children. And Robert Darne told the court none of that, and the judge signed anyway. What happened next is sitting inside federal records that almost nobody has read. But it is all there. The names, the dates, the orders that got ignored, the woman who refused to stop, and the ending, which is not what Robert Darne expected when he walked out of that courthouse, believing he had won. Because Hannah Matthews did not go home and grieve quietly. She went to find someone with more power than a county judge, and she found them. Stay with me. Before any of this happened, Hannah Matthews was simply trying to live. She was somewhere in her early 30s, formerly enslaved on the Darne property in Frederick County, Maryland. A woman whose hands had spent years doing work that was never called work. Because property doesn't work. Property produces. She had 2 children, Thomas, who was 9, and had his mother's eyes in the habit of watching adults carefully before he spoke. Mary, who was 6 and still small enough that Hannah could pull her close when the nights got cold and the quarters got quiet. These children were Hannah's entire world. Not because she had nothing else, because in a system designed to take everything, they were what hadn't been taken yet. That is the terror enslaved mothers lived with. Not just the lash, not just the hunger, the arithmetic, a debt in the owner's family, a bad harvest, a probate division between heirs. Any of those could mean a sale. Any sale could mean a child on a wagon heading somewhere Hannah couldn't follow. She had survived that fear for years. And then the war ended. And for one moment, one brief, dangerous moment, it felt like the arithmetic had finally changed. Freedom was real. The bureau was open. Black families across Maryland were finding each other, filing papers, claiming names, building something. Hannah had her children beside her. She had survived. And then Robert Darne walked into a courthouse. And that one moment of peace ended before it had fully begun. Robert Darne didn't need a weapon. He needed a pen, and he knew exactly how to use it. The law said, find a judge, call the mother unfit, sign the paper, no hearing, no notice to the mother, no investigation, no proof required, just one man's word, and 2 children became someone's legal property again. Different word on the document, same result. Darne had studied this. He moved fast. 3 days after emancipation reached Frederick County. Before Hannah could file anything. Before the bureau was fully staffed. Before anyone with authority had time to pay attention to one freed woman's complaint. He walked into Judge Erasmus Kilbourne's courtroom. He brought the right language. He stated that Thomas Matthews and Mary Matthews were without adequate parental care. He did not mention that their mother was alive. He did not mention she was present. He did not mention that she had just been freed from his own land, that she was standing in that same county at that exact moment, asking neighbors where her children had been taken. Judge Kilbourne signed, Thomas Matthews, bound to Robert Darne until age 21. Mary Matthews, bound to Robert Darne until age 18. Read that again. A 9-year-old boy, 12 more years of unpaid labor, A 6-year-old girl, 12 more years on the same farm, under the same man, with a legal document making it almost impossible to challenge. Slavery had a different name now. That was all that had changed. When Hannah found out, and she found out fast, she didn't sit down. She didn't cry in a corner. She walked straight to the nearest Freedmen's Bureau office. Picture that office. Warped floorboards. A single desk buried under papers. An agent who had already seen 3 cases like this that week and would see 4 more before Friday. Hannah sat down across from him, and she gave him every name she had. Her name, her children's names, Robert Darne's name, Judge Kilbourne's name. She knew all of them. She had been watching these men her entire life. The agent picked up a pen, and for the first time since those papers were filed, the paper trail started moving in Hannah's direction. Because she had just done something Robert Darne never expected. She had made herself official. She had entered the record, and records are dangerous. Records survive. The bureau agent sent a letter to Robert Darne. It was polite, it was formal. It said in plain terms, return the children. Darne ignored it. This is the part of the story that should make your blood run cold. Not because it is surprising, because it isn't. A white landowner in Frederick County, Maryland in 1865, ignoring a federal letter about 2 black children, was not taking a risk. He was making a calculation. He had seen how these things went. A letter came. You waited. The bureau agent moved on to the next complaint. The children stayed. Except this time, Hannah didn't move on. She came back. She filed again. She stood in that office with its warped wooden floor and its ink-stained desk, and she said the same sentence she had been saying since the papers were filed. "Bring me my children!" The bureau escalated. A second formal communication went to Darne. This one had more weight behind it. This one named the sub-assistant commissioner. This one used language that suggested the next step would not be a letter. Darne still resisted. Think about what that means. A federal officer had now told him twice to return those children. He had refused twice, because he still believed, in the fall of 1865, with the war barely over, that he could outlast a black woman's complaint, that the system would eventually protect him, that Hannah would get tired. She did not get tired, and the Bureau ran out of patience. Here is the moment everything changed. The Freedmen's Bureau filed a writ of habeas corpus. If you don't know that term, here is what it means in plain language. It means produce this person in court. It means you cannot simply hold someone. You must justify it. In front of a judge with a record. That writ turned Hannah Matthews's case from a local complaint into a federal legal matter. Robert Darne could no longer wait it out. He could no longer ignore letters. He had to appear. He had to explain, on the record in front of a court, why Thomas Matthews, age 9, and Mary Matthews, age 6, were still on his property. The case was heard under the framework of the Civil Rights Act of 1866. That act, passed just months earlier, was radical for its time. It stated, clearly, legally, for the first time, that black Americans were citizens, that they had the same legal rights as white citizens, that a court could not simply take a black mother's children and hand them to a white man on the word of a single judge who hadn't even notified her. The Federal Circuit Court looked at the Kilbourne indentures. They looked at the claim that Hannah was unfit. They looked at the fact that she had been present, alive, and capable at the time the papers were filed, and they reversed the indentures, both of them. Thomas Matthews, released. Mary Matthews, released. Robert Darne had spent months calculating that this woman would give up. He had used a courthouse. He had used a judge. He had used the law as a weapon. And the law, a different law, a federal law, had taken it out of his hands. Hannah Matthews walked out of that process with both her children. She had done it with no money, no attorney of record, no political connections. Just repetition, just presence, just the same sentence, filed again and again, until someone with power was forced to listen. That is the hidden truth inside this case. It was not inevitable. It was not fast. It was not easy. It happened because she refused to stop. By late 1866, Hannah Matthews had left Frederick County. There was nothing there for her now, except the land where she had been enslaved and the courthouse where a judge had tried to sell her children back into bondage with a different word on the paper. She moved to Baltimore. She found work as a laundress. She kept Thomas. She kept Mary. That is not a small ending. That is an enormous one, because in hundreds of cases, exactly like hers, the ending was different. The Bureau couldn't reach every county. Not every agent filed a writ. Not every judge applied the Civil Rights Act fairly. Not every mother got a second hearing. Some children stayed on those farms for years. Some never came home at all. Hannah's case survived in the record because it escalated far enough to generate federal paperwork. Most cases didn't reach that level, which means for every Hannah Matthews in the archive, there are dozens of women whose names appear once in a single complaint and then vanish, not because they gave up, because the system stopped writing them down.